This week's episode of This Is Only a Test is brought to you by you out there, the supporters of Tested.com. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast and watching our videos. And if you like the content we make and want to see more of it, you should check out our new merchandise. We have t-shirts now in the Tested shop. The website is tested.com/shop. And for just a few more days, we'll be selling the new one-day builds t-shirts. A limited run after Monday afternoon. We will not be selling any more of these. So this is your last chance to get this t-shirt, to wear it while you make your own builds, and to, of course, support our one-day builds video. Your purchase of shirts directly lets us make more one-day build videos. So again, thank you so much for listening to podcasts, watching our videos, and on with the show.
Hey, let's start the show.
For Thursday, August 2nd, 2018, welcome to This Is Only a Test, the official podcast of Tested.com. I would love to one day see the sheet music for that intro. I forget who composed it, but one of you out there composed it for us and probably did not generate the sheet music.
Yeah.
Probably just did it just
for free.
Well, yes, absolutely. But extemporaneously.
Yes.
But if there was sheet music, that'd be really cool. And then we could play it. We could play it on Labo. Get Nintendo, get a keyboard.
We could take it to karaoke bars.
I think it would be really impressive. If we ever did this show live, I would want to play the intro on a keyboard live.
I don't want to do this show live.
It'd be a very long show. And how are you doing this fine early Tuesday morning? We're recording this a day early than usual. Welcome back, Jeremy Williams.
Thank you. I think we recorded this so we could go today.
Yeah.
So we are on Tuesday's schedule. I'm back from Pinburgh, which is the world's largest pinball tournament ever held in
Classic arcade
history.
And pinball convention?
Well, yes, it's Replay FX for all the arcade stuff, but Pinburgh is an ongoing, has been going for a long time, for several years, which is a huge pinball tournament. Anyone's invited to come and play, and there's hundreds of people, 840 people gathered from all over the world in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And they've been doing that for a while, but they recently, in the past, like I think 5 years ago, they turned it into like an arcade event. So it's open to many more people. It's sort of like California Extreme.
Only the second most exciting classic arcade and pinball event in America this past weekend.
This weekend it was.
This weekend, yeah.
Except for me, it was pretty good. I ended up walking away with a medal.
Whoa.
Whoa. Let's save that for tilt warning.
Yeah, yes. I want to hear.
There's no tilt warning. Is there tilt warning this week? I guess there is a little bit of news. No, but it's not a big deal. I got a second place in D division, which I didn't have the best first day, so I ended up in the lower divisions. But I ended up having a good second day and third day. It was fun.
Is it an actual medal?
Yeah, I meant to wear it, but I was too sleepy, so I didn't bring it. But it's
so like a medallion, like what Han gets, with the ribbon and everything.
Exactly.
No trophies, medals.
The first place for A division got a trophy. Every other winner, first through fourth of A, B, C, D, and E, all got a medallion.
Wow. Is it a custom machined medallion?
It's beautiful. It's absolutely, yeah. It's heavy. It's
metal.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's painted in like some interesting way.
Oh, you got to bring it.
I will. I'll bring it in. And I also walked away with a little cash. So it was
nice.
It's a cash tournament, cash prizes.
Dude, I won, and I'm in D. I won $750.
Wow. What is the big takeaway? What is the purse for A division?
A division, the top ranked player, Keith Elwin, won again. He won $15,000.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
There you go, kids.
Forget
your Overwatch.
I'm not the only
your PUBG.
second place winner in the Bay Area. Bay Area's own Andre Masenkoff walked away with second place in A division.
Wow.
So we had a good showing, the Bay Area.
The Bay Area contingent.
Ready Player One, if that's real life, that's an extra life token. You hold on to that medal.
Absolutely. Yeah, you should. Well, we had some reveals, some birthings in the Tested family this week. Not talking about what happened in California Extreme. We're talking about our very own Joey Famelli. A huge congratulations to him and his wife, who brought forth their first child.
Yeah, it's their first Tested premium member.
That's right. That's right.
Everyone is healthy and
a video
happy.
producer in the making. Joey is going to be on paternity leave for a few weeks, and we congratulate them and wish them the best, and can't wait to meet their little one.
Very happy for you
And
guys.
as a little aside, you should check out the little video of Joey behind the scenes of a farewell to arms that's been posted on social media.
Yeah, this is the last big project before the baby came.
I wanted to throw out a quick story from Pinburgh. I had several people come up and say hi who are fans of Tested, and I loved meeting them. But one person didn't realize I was from Tested until about a half hour into the conversation.
Oh, no.
When suddenly my identity became, oh, you work with Norm. And I realized that for some people out there, that is who I am.
But like not a podcast listener then.
Well, who knows? Who knows? But I just
Just
thought
a
it was
viewer
funny.
of the show on YouTube.
Yeah.
Did you go, I'm Norm, left adjacent, nice to meet you?
Exactly. And then I saw my epitaph in my head, and it was, he worked with Norm.
Worked with, okay. I'll take that. I'll buy you that tombstone.
Yeah.
That's better than mine. He also worked with Norm.
Top story this week.
So while you were over in Pittsburgh and Pinburgh, we were in Santa Clara, California for the annual California Extreme, sharing a space with the Jehovah's Witnesses convention.
Really?
Every year.
Wow.
And parking is very difficult in the Santa Clara Convention Center, even with the new stadium. So you got to get there early. It is a 2-day event in Santa Clara, highly recommended. I think it's like $60 for both days. Open from 10 a.m. to 2 a.m. the following day, 2 days consecutively. Hundreds of machines, classic arcade machines, pinball machines, and basically it's free to play. You just walk in with your wristband and play whatever you want. People bring it's the generosity of the collectors out there and the people who want to offload their machines. Some machines are for sale, but it's a great place. If you don't want to pay $3 to play dialed in, then
The pinball machine?
yes,
Yeah.
the Jersey Jack pinball machine, you could just play it the whole weekend.
Yeah, for
And-
free.
and for free, or essentially after your ticket price.
Right.
So besides classic games, are there new games too?
There are new games. Some new games. Some very creative new games. There was one game. Gosh, I forgot the name of this. It was reminiscent of Scorched Earth, vector style graphics.
The tank game.
Yes, and I think it was a 4-player game. And there was one game that made its appearance on social media that I didn't get to see, and it was a mechanical Pong.
Oh, yeah. Those guys, I think they kickstarted that
Oh,
a while ago, and they've now been bringing it around to shows.
it looked super cool from the videos I saw on Twitter.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it was even there because I would have wanted to check it out. But whatever motors or whatever servos they're using,
Pretty fast.
really, really fast.
And they put LEDs on the sides to give effects.
right, and the video I saw, you could see through the glass to see all the electronics underneath. But if you light it a certain way, I guess the idea is it's supposed to look like Pong.
Right.
It's just supposed to be the paddles and the ball,
Yeah.
the pixels. But if you light up the bottom from the bottom, then you could see all the electronics. You could see that it's actually a mechanical
That's very
2-axis
cool.
Pong machine. That was cool, but perhaps the coolest thing was something that we alluded to last week that we unveiled, I would say, even certified by California Extreme as the star of the show.
Yep.
Really?
Yeah. The
Must-see game of the show.
must-see game of the show, a invention of Tested and collaborators, other oceans,
Friends of
creation.
Tested.
Friends of Tested's minds, Starlords.
This is the project that Sean and I have been working on for our big Bits to Atoms episode for the years, seems like, for the past 4 or 5 months.
Yes.
And we haven't been really talked about it much because we didn't want to. It was so long a production, we didn't want to tease because it would have been too long till we showed anything.
So while we did show it, it is, like Jeremy said, it is a Bits to Atoms little mini build project that you out there will be able to watch in the fall, documenting what it takes to make a modern day arcade cabinet, but inspired by 80s Atari games.
We had Mike on the show, and he just off the cuff, probably 2 years ago, said, if you guys, he loves Warlords, this classic 2600 game, also an arcade game. And he said, if you guys ever want to remake Warlords into an arcade cabinet, we'd do the software. So
you took him up on his offer.
That idea stuck. And we went back to him and we said, well, what do you think? And so we really, everyone involved, just, man, they knocked it out of the park. The guys over at Other Ocean, Micah's team, did all the game software. Sean designed the most epic cabinet I think I've ever seen in an arcade. And
eye-catching.
And
it feels like out of Doctor Who or
Star Trek.
Yeah,
it's very sci-fi. And then it's a 6-player sci-fi Warlords kind of homage. And I did the LEDs for the cabinet
and the controls
and all the electronics. It was a challenge for everybody, but it was great because we had this deadline, California Extreme 2018, and we got it done about 2 days beforehand.
Yep. Yeah, everything came together 2 days beforehand. Over the course of the series, you'll see how the software and the hardware of this machine shaped up and all the discussions that go into software. It wasn't just, we want to make this game, okay, let's split apart and do it.
Yeah.
Lots of in-depth game design and physical cabinet design. Our friend Zach Redding, also a guest on this show, hugely instrumental in letting us use his shop space for CNCing.
I don't know how we could have done that cabinet without CNC.
Oh, I don't think we could have. It would have been very, very difficult.
Yeah.
Sean did the CAD design for the machine, and you'll be able to find pictures of this on Twitter. Just search hashtag Starlords, and there's a few videos. But we were there for the first half of Saturday at California Extreme. It was packed the entire time. There crowds grew, and of course, it was waves. But once 2 people got on the machine, then 4 people, then 6 people, then a crowd, and the game's designed in best first to 2 points.
Mm-hmm.
And so some of the rounds, some of the whole matches to get on the high score board would take like 15 minutes.
I hadn't thought about that as a strategy. You don't want to win quickly.
No, you want to win slowly because you want to kill the other people and take their points.
Exactly. That's interesting. So you want to get to 2, but you don't want to get to 3. Or right, I mean, you want to get 1 point, but you don't want to get to 2.
And maybe you want to get 1 point slowly,
right.
And then you want to let someone else get to 1 point, and then
yes, exactly.
Yeah, the longer the game,
That's
the higher the potential score.
Wow.
These strategies organically developed. It was amazing to look at not just people playing the game, to watch Sean and Micah's faces and this is why we wish you were there, Jeremy, as people were playing the game, because they were learning new things about this arcade machine that they developed, that they designed the software for, that were unexpected until you put it into the wild, until people actually spent time with it.
That's awesome. Steve Lynn was there, and he also a friend of the show and podcast member at times. He mentioned a story about how some kid had been playing the game a ton.
He was there the whole time I was there.
And then Micah, programmer of the game, saddled up next to him to play without saying who he was. And the kid started sharing all of his strategies with Mike. And Mike said, highlight of his career.
Yeah. I mean, as a game developer,
amazing.
that's the most rewarding thing. And the smiles on people's faces when they're playing the game. Kids, adults. We had people who work for Atari come by and were blown away. And all these stories will make its way. We're going to still have to wrap up this series with an epilogue.
So even though Warlords is like a relatively obscure game, people picked up on the game really quickly.
So simple.
You mean how to play it?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's basically Pong, but for 6 players.
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it. The effects were great. I think it pulled together all of your various levels, skills, and expertise, and gave you all room to learn new things as well. A real good metric for a project. So stay tuned for that. We are in the editing process for that now. And
you wanted to keep it under wraps. You didn't want to talk about it like last week. You didn't want to talk about it at all.
No.
I think part of you was hoping no one would talk about it at the show.
Yeah.
Because you wanted to keep this under wraps
because
for the video.
For the video. And now you got to wait a couple months. Let's all forget about it.
Right.
And then when Starlords, the series, comes out this fall, then we'll start sharing the word.
I can't wait.
I'm so tired. Maybe because I stayed up and watched. I stayed up from like midnight to 4 a.m. and watched the full Infinity War extended cut bonus with all the bonus featurettes.
So
as soon as it came out,
Infinity War came out today.
Yes,
at midnight. You were able to watch it.
Yes, and there's one bonus feature I just want to shout out that I thought was brilliant. It's the first one that you hit. They had a directors roundtable with 9 directors of previous MCU films. So they had like Taika Waititi, they had Joss Whedon, they had Jon Favreau, they had James Gunn was there, they had the Russo brothers, they had Ryan Coogler was there, and they talked about the inspiration for all of these movies, and they talked about how Joss created a really iconic comic book movie that felt like a comic book. That first Avengers movie.
Yeah.
And how Ryan Coogler really wanted to do The Godfather with Black Panther. He drew a lot of inspiration on that. Like, he saw Black Panther as a Michael Corleone-like character, and his father as
legacy,
Don.
the legacy
and
of family.
He tells this story about Francis Coppola watching his movie and giving him notes, and just like as just a film buff
in production.
Like he screened it at his ranch.
Oh my God,
that's really cool.
And just like losing his mind. And so they talked about the inspiration for all these movies from classic movies. I think it's the best watch of it all.
Is there a moderator?
I mean, Jon Favreau kind of takes that on. And if you ever watch he used to have an old series called Dinner for Five.
Loved it.
On IFC. So he kind of operates it like that. I sort of wish that went on for like another hour, because I could have heard them talk about all of like the classic film inspirations, because they talked really, I mean, we've talked a lot about this, how the MCU has really become genre films that are modeled after, different things. And they talk about that. It was definitely a little like navel gazing, but it was fun to do that for a little bit.
Well, they're the Avengers of directors right now.
Yeah. And quite frankly, some of them are doing some pretty innovative stuff.
Oh, wow. Interesting that James Gunn was on there. Of course, they recorded this before he was fired by Disney from Guardians of the Galaxy 3. And I talked last week about the firing and how little disappointed I was in some of the cast members not coming to support him more directly.
They must be podcast listeners.
And, well, at least their publicists are, because the cast members have all now issued a joint statement. And they said they had waited the 10 days to really digest and process this, and I think it's totally their right and prerogative to do so. And they, it's while the statement itself doesn't formally call for the reinstatement of James Gunn, they basically say it is a call for reinstatement in their own Twitter accounts. And so I don't think it'll actually change anything.
Really?
I don't think so.
I think it will.
You think so? You think he'll come back? You think Disney's going to bring him back? And
I think so, partially because I think the general feeling is that he's made an authentic apology for these tweets, and that the passionate defense from the cast, I think, carries a lot of weight with the fans. And this week, I mean, we also saw the reinstatement of Chris Hardwick this week, so I wonder if we're entering a phase of where there might be just more of a moment where Disney has cover to do this.
If you go down the route of he issued a sincere apology and we forgive him for that, it's like a pardon, right? The pardon is also an admission of guilt, and it does not, and that's not to say he's not guilty of those tweets and he's not responsible for those tweets, but then it also does not take into account the smear campaign and the targeted way in which these old tweets were surfaced and then propagated and then turned as mob against him. And that's the thing that I don't think they'll ever see Disney acknowledge, that they were conned essentially into this. It's very different.
Not that they would ever acknowledge that.
And I think that's a big disappointment. I do hope to see that he's reinstated. I don't have high hopes for it, so I will be happy to be surprised if it does happen.
It would require an admission of not wrongdoing, but a mistake on Disney's side to rehire him, because he wasn't just put on leave. he was let go.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And
oh
so
yeah.
that would mean them eating their words a little
which
bit.
is very different than the Chris Hardwick situation that you just mentioned, because
Where
they're the AMC. To AMC's credit, they did not. They did take him off the air, but they did it in a way where they said they would conduct a formal investigation. And of course, that has its own problems that we're not going to dive into. But the resolution of that is that Chris Hardwick's going to be back on television.
I always think this will depend on a lot of stuff that we can't see, like what happened behind the scenes. Did James Gunn try to cover this up from Disney when it initially came to light? That's like, because the cover up can be worse than the crime itself, right?
Yeah.
So I wonder how hard the feelings are between the two parties at this point.
And the cover up is part of the process now. It's almost like when people are hired in high profile positions or vying for high profile positions, whether it's in politics or entertainment, there are experts, there are companies that you can hire to comb and help you hide your past, because your past is very different. What your past is and how it's surfaced is very different today than it was even 10 years ago.
How do you know about this? You looked into this?
I've heard this on the radio.
Oh, you heard about it?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Hey, listen, NPR.
He combed Twitter for our tweets before coming onto this show.
That's right. Oh, God. You can download all of your tweets.
Yeah.
And I don't know if services auto archive. Like, look, if you look through any of our tweets, you'd find some stupid things. I've said some really stupid stuff because Twitter was not founded, whenever, was it 11, 12 years ago, as the same kind of publishing platform that it is considered today, that people don't realize it is today.
I mean, it used to be really goofy and frankly, a lot more fun.
It
Like
was
10 years ago.
open DMs, and it was your AOL Instant Messenger away message. God, imagine all your AOL Instant Messenger away messages archived and indexable.
What do you mean away message? What was that?
You could set your status, essentially.
Oh, right.
And that status was basically what Twitter ended up being, how Twitter started, because it was your status, the quote unquote status broadcast to the world. Remember, Twitter didn't used to be about statements; it was your status.
Yeah, it was like what you're doing.
What you're doing.
Yeah.
Eating a hot dog right now. About to go to the bathroom.
I think a couple weeks ago, it was my Twitter anniversary, and I retweeted my first tweet, which was, I think it said, "This soccer game is crazy." So I was quite the thinker, and back then.
Yeah. It just makes me want to delete Twitter. But if it wasn't for Twitter, I wouldn't also know about things like Henry Cavill's arms reloading in the new Mission Impossible movie, which is something I'm going to talk about now, even though I know neither of you have seen the movie.
Oh, you haven't seen it either?
I haven't seen it.
We got to go see it.
You guys got to see
Wait,
it.
is it good?
Here's what I will say. The movie,
He's seen it twice.
I've seen it twice already. Well, I also have it basically for free with my my Moviepass equivalent.
Hey, you
my-
choose to
my
spend your
AMC.
time, though.
That is true, and pay for parking and pay for snacks. So that is money spent and time spent. Time I can't get back. Time I wouldn't want to get back because I loved it so much. The movie came out last weekend, and it was interesting because the TV ads, as Friday came closer, started taking into account the reviews. The studio was very happy. 96% on Rotten Tomatoes was what the TV ads said.
Wow.
And then when the day the movie came out, guess what the Rotten Tomatoes score was?
90?
98%.
Oh, my goodness.
It went up by 2 points.
Oh, it usually does the reverse.
It usually does the reverse. So expectations were very high, was my point for this film. And some people have called it, I don't want to set expectations too high, but some people say that in the halls of Valhalla for action films, it is up there with Mad Max Fury Road as one of the best action films of all time.
Wow. Okay.
I'm a big fan of Christopher McQuarrie, the screenwriter and now director. And I'm a big fan of Mission Impossible franchise. And I'd say that if you're a fan of those movies, just like if you're a fan of the Fast and Furious movies, they're not for everyone. This one really ties together a lot and is like essential viewing if you liked Mission Impossible 3, 4, 5, and 6.
Oh, my God.
It's number 7.
That's incredible.
That
Really?
Made 7. Would you like me to go recap?
Are you sure?
I'm-
It's
No.
7. This is
I'm
6.
sorry, 6.
Yeah,
3, 4,
this is
5.
6.
Yeah, this is 6. This is 6. I was thinking Fast and Furious.
Is this the final one? Are they going to go out with a
I
bang?
really hope so. It doesn't need to go. It doesn't end with a cliffhanger. Ends really nicely. It could end here. Tom Cruise is 56 years old. There's no way he's jumping out and doing Halo jumps 2 years from now.
All right.
What could they do? I mean, the Mission Impossible films in recent memory have always been, starting with 4, I guess, have always been, look at Tom Cruise do some ridiculous stunt work. Dave Chen of Slash Film in his podcast said that it almost has a reverse uncanny valley effect, in that unlike the Uncanny Valley where you look at something and you can't believe it's real, here you look at something and you can't believe it's real, even though it is real. They must have CG'd it. How could they have filmed this for real? And they did film it for real.
Well, there's always some things. There's always straps or safety gear that you don't see.
But they're the physical stunts. So it's a good point. Like Mission Impossible 4 was the Brad Bird one. And I would still maintain that Mission Impossible 3 is probably my favorite. That's the J.J. Abrams one, his first film that he directed. Everything he had learned from making the TV show Alias in terms of a spy story, he put into that film. And Bad Robot Productions produced the last 3, I believe. 4. And Mission Impossible 4, Brad Bird, shot in IMAX, Burj Khalifa, huge stunt. Tom Cruise, one of the tallest buildings in the world, and climbed on the outside of it. Regardless, if you're going to have, even if you have straps tied to you, the fact that they put an IMAX camera outside the tallest building in the world and had one of the highest paid actors in the world climb outside of it is something you pay your $10 to a movie theater to see.
I don't know. I disagree. I get that he did that, and that's amazing. But every time I go to see movies now, I'm so overwhelmed with incredible scenery and effects and stunts that I just expect that, and I've become desensitized to whether it's real or not. And so it's hard for me to remember that it's real and to not.
And there goes the Uncanny Valley.
You know
that's
what I mean?
I think that's what the marketing is so important, because when you talk about a film like Avengers: Infinity War, $200 million film, that film, so much of that was on green screen, was on CG sets. Even the stuff in New York felt small, felt like in a park in Atlanta as opposed to being actually in New York.
Yeah. But because with these movies you don't see all of the making of, like when you're watching it, you don't see where
it has to be the buildup,
where the safety net is, and you don't see who's the stuntman. Like there's got to be a stuntman somewhere.
No stuntman for Tom Cruise.
Ever?
His own stunts.
Really?
Always. And that's why in Mission Impossible 5, the movie poster, the very first scene in the film, this is not a spoiler, this movie came out 3 years ago, he's holding onto the side of an airplane, and there's extensive footage of him, this cargo plane taking off, and he's holding on to the airplane as it's taking off.
Yeah.
That is an insane thing for anyone to do, let alone multiple times for a film shoot.
Yeah, I guess I'm with you. The point I wanted to make is you compare this to a Jackie Chan movie, like the old ones, where you go to see that because you know that's Jackie Chan doing everything and doing all of his own stunts. But it's also martial arts, and that's something that you can't get away. There's no safety net that makes martial arts better.
Yeah, and the action choreography, I would say, is really good in this recent one.
Okay, great.
The one stunt in this new one, it's a halo jump, high altitude, low opening, I want to say, where the parachute deploys very late. They did it over the UAE, is where they were allowed to film this. But there are shots that Christopher McQuarrie has been sharing on Twitter where the cameraman, has a camera strapped to the top of his head. And this is it's a one-shot sequence.
Love him.
Where Tom Cruise runs out of the airplane, and the camera person's running backwards with the camera looking at Tom Cruise. The camera person jumps out of the airplane. You never see his hands, of course.
Well, how do you know this?
Because there's footage. There's another person who jumped out even before who filmed the whole thing.
There's a second man with a camera strapped to his head, chasing the guy with the camera strapped to his head. And
the camera op with the high res Panasonic camera on top of his head also has a GoPro underneath that, so for a wider angle view. Jumps out. Tom Cruise jumps out, and yes, they CG in some of the clouds and the ground. It's Paris underneath them. They CG that in, but the horizon line is real. And the imperfections in cinematography, the camera person has to fly close to Tom Cruise. There is no follow focus. There's no autofocus. It's all by feel. They know that their focus distance is it's going to be 4 feet. And so Tom Cruise has to stay while falling out of an airplane and doing essentially a dangerous skydive, knows he can't get closer than 3 or 4 feet to the camera op, or else the shot will be out of focus, and then has to act while doing this action sequence while they're tumbling around each other in this crazy dramatic sequence.
That's absolutely insane. I mean, that's absolutely Cirque du Soleil level choreography.
And they did 100 jumps out of an airplane just to rehearse for that.
That's nuts.
For this shot.
My point is I think CG has killed that for me because I cannot appreciate it.
That's really unfortunate.
It is. It is unfortunate.
They said that they had tried doing a wind tunnel, and the cinematography just wasn't right. They couldn't get it you would see the CG transitions, and here I think there's like one CG transition that you can notice if you really squint hard, but otherwise it looks real. Anyway, highly recommended. I was able to see it with the AMC Pass. People with Moviepass, though, not able to see it because that company's going through some problems.
Problems? It's on fire, basically. Like, I imagine, like, This Is Fine is a documentary based on the Moviepass offices. Right
What did someone say? It's like the Brewster's Millions plan is in full effect. They're spending money as fast as they can, or else they won't win the contest.
I mean, this is basically why I didn't want to be a Moviepass subscriber. Is we've gotten to the point where the system's down. Now they're like, oh, you can't go see these movies. Like Mission Impossible was on a restricted list.
Right. Not only certain movies on restricted lists, but also certain theaters. So they have all the data. They kind of know what their demographics are going to want to watch. And now it sucks because they're limiting not only they're doing the surge pricing, but also the surge limitation. But now entire movies, entire theater chains are being pulled off in peak periods for the Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And someone did the math for their cash flow and said it would be a miracle if they were still in operation by the end of this week. So
this week,
but when we record the podcast next week, unless there's a huge cash infusion, it may be RIP Moviepass.
I was totally off on my prediction. I said they'd make it to September. I guess first week of August. Who added that in the Deadpool?
When did Ryan get his Moviepass? Was it last month?
No.
It was 2 months ago?
1 month ago.
2 months ago?
Yeah, at least 2 months ago.
Okay. Because I have predicted 1 month after he got his pass.
Well, he's gone beyond that. And I think most people did the full annual subscription, paid the $100 for the full year.
Oh, no.
And if the company goes under, that's $100 gone. So you better, hopefully, you've had seen 10 movies
Good.
to make that. Well, definitely, I don't think it's going to last until next year, Moviepass. It would be highly unlikely, I think, that Moviepass will be around next year when Star Wars Episode 9 comes out. And so you have to pay real cash money to see this newly announced cast of Star Wars Episode 9.
Well, you won't.
Well, I won't. I'll have AMC. I'll have paid my $20 a month.
All right, who's in the cast?
All right.
Hit me.
Everyone that you've expected. So you got Daisy Ridley, Adam Driver, John Boyega, Oscar Isaac. Those are the main cast members, the new guard, right?
Yeah.
Then you also have, and not unsurprisingly, Lupita Nyong'o playing Maz. Donald Gleason, of course, playing Hux. Kelly Marie Tran, Rose coming back, and then.
So she didn't die? I guess I don't remember.
No.
Okay.
No.
She was hurt.
She was on the ship.
Pretty well hurt.
Yes.
Okay.
But on the Falcon, the last of the Resistance.
Right.
Billy Lord's going to be in there. That's Carrie Fisher's daughter, who played a larger role in Last Jedi. And I don't know who this is. Junice Suotamo? You may have to Google that. Who I think was another returning cast member. But
he's Chewbacca.
Oh, of course. Okay, new Chewbacca. Newbacca. There we go. He needs maybe 2 more Star Wars movies before I start remembering his name.
He's a Finnish dude, I think.
Tall dude.
Yeah.
Joining the cast, a couple new actors to the series, Naomi Ackie, Richard E. Grant, and Kerry Russell.
Which we had heard rumors about months ago.
Yes. And the veteran cast members, Mark Hamill.
Mark Hamill,
beard shaved, but still coming back.
Okay.
Ghost Hamill.
Anthony Daniels, C-3PO.
Yeah, okay.
Didn't play a big part in the last one. And we had talked about this previously. Billy D. Williams.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Back as Lando. Now the big announcement. I think this is all PR fluff. The big announcement is that Leia will be in the film.
Yeah.
As portrayed by Carrie Fisher, using not CG but using stock footage or unused footage. And the interesting thing is the unused footage is going to come from not The Last Jedi, but from The Force Awakens.
Oh, because like Last Jedi, she's pretty much on the ship most of the time.
And aesthetically, she's
right?
very different. They dressed her up differently. She looks more regal in Last Jedi, and in Force Awakens she has more military fatigues. She's more the general role.
Right.
And it makes some sense because J.J. Abrams shot Force Awakens and he's co-writing the new one, so he could shoehorn this in. I'm of two minds about it. One, I'm glad that they're going to hopefully have some resolution to her character and that they are able to find footage to make it work and not have to use CG. But two, the fact that they had to make it work means that it's going to be shoehorned to some extent, that they either had to shoehorn the role or shoehorn the story.
Well, they made that decision. They made that decision when she didn't die in The Last Jedi. They could have made that happen at some point. And
it could also have been in the tech scroll. The character didn't have to be in the movie. The last movie was dedicated to her.
General Leia has gone on an extended vacation.
Well,
Yeah. I get what you mean. It all depends on the story. Like, quite frankly, like, this movie shouldn't be about Lando and Leia and Luke. And that's, I think any time it relies on those old characters is where these movies fall down.
You think it's gonna be satisfactory? Her role, not the movie.
No.
Yeah.
I don't.
It's a tough situation for all the filmmakers to be in.
Whatever it is, I hope it's just small.
Well, I'm afraid it's going to be small, and that's not going to be good. Like, I'm afraid it's going to be fan service in a small little throwaway little scene.
At that point,
J.J.
it should
Abrams,
just be written off in the scroll.
Right.
J.J. Abrams doesn't do fan service.
Dude,
Come on.
Shut up, dude. That's not true. I'm worried about that. I'm glad they're not doing CG. I'm glad they have learned their lesson there from Admiral Tarkin.
Speaking of fan service, we may see more in terms of fandoms, big fandoms. The Lord of the Rings characters and the whole story, of course, purchased by Amazon to produce as a TV show. Amazon now has picked up 2 people to develop the show, not necessarily write it or showrun it. We don't know what their roles are exactly going to be, but to develop the show. And these are the co-writers of the upcoming Star Trek 4.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, J.D. Payne and Patrick McKay are going to be helming the Lord of the Rings television show. I'm a little surprised that there's no, original Peter Jackson, Richard Taylor involvement in this and how much it'll be tied to that world, aesthetically, story-wise, or if this is going to be a fresh take. Do people who are the Game of Thrones watchers today, the global phenomenon that is Game of Thrones, are those same audiences, do they revere Lord of the Rings in the same way, or is that a time past? Because Lord of the Rings is 15 years old now.
I think Lord of the Rings is timeless, and that was proved out by the movie, because when did the books come out?
I'm saying the movie. I'm talking about the Peter Jackson trilogy.
Don't you feel like that's the PG-13 version to the R-rated Game of Thrones? Like, that audience grew up. Are they going to be ready to revert to a PG-13 thing again?
Right, are they banking on nostalgia, or are they banking on trying to get a new audience, the Game of Thrones audience?
Yeah, I don't know.
I frankly, just speaking for myself, am not interested in this show that much. I feel like this story has been told for me.
Well, it's supposed to be everything but what you saw on screen.
Yeah, what is that?
That's a really good question.
There isn't that much left in the source material. So unless they're writing new stuff, which they could do.
Yep.
But even that I'm not interested in, because that was the beauty of that series to a certain extent, is it didn't try to be more than it was.
Well, that's I think the fundamental problem with or the conflict with people who create worlds in their stories. These world builders create these wonderful worlds in their books, but tell very small stories that exist in those worlds. Small characters taking big parts, right? And it's same with Game of Thrones. What you see in Game of Thrones in Westeros, you get a sense that that's only a small part of this unexplored world that's out there. Do we really need to dig into every nook and cranny? It's the same with Star Wars, right? There's a universe of characters out there, and Disney obviously has made the choice to dive into everything and not make it just the Skywalker story.
Well, I don't know, man. I mean, you could certainly make a show. You could make this exact same show and call it something that's not Lord of the Rings, and it would be the same thing. You could make it original. They're just using the Lord of the Rings license as a hook to get people to watch the first episode and to get some buzz about it. Whether or not it's good or not is almost irrelevant to whether or not it's Lord of the Rings.
I want the Treebeard Christmas special.
No, you don't.
You
We're
want
gonna
like
get it
a
one day.
8-hour Ent special?
Yes. Well, it's going to take 8 hours. They walk very slow. What else we got? Switching over. Speaking of Disney, you guys been following this straw controversy?
Yeah, I mean, San Francisco apparently has been considering a ban on straws as a way to, for environmental reasons. Starbucks is supposedly considering this out in 2020, I think. I've always thought of this in two lights. One, straws actually have an accessibility use for a number of people. So they need to maintain some straws so that like drinks are functional for a set of folks.
There's compostable straws.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
But it also feels like this is nibbling at the edges. We're talking about like 500 straws equals one water bottle.
Right.
So I've always
Well, at
not
scale,
thought much of this.
Because we're talking about
At something like Disney or
Right.
Starbucks, maybe this makes a big difference. Who knows how many straws they go through in a day?
the solution is they're going to have the backup straws for people who want or need them, but by default, you will just not get them.
Are they switching to compostable straws or no straws?
No straws.
No
for more.
straws. How about that, man?
Yeah. Environmental commitments.
All right.
Speaking of, we're going to go back to media content. Hey, Apple. Remember Apple is going to spend a bunch of money to try to compete with Netflix and Hulu and Amazon?
Yeah.
They're developing a Time Bandits revival.
Yeah.
Was that a big part of your childhood, Time Bandits?
Huge. Absolutely huge. I watched this at the age where it was real. You know,
Okay.
Where the giant walking out of the ocean was a giant with a ship on his head. And I believed every minute of it.
And the chessboard and the knight. And
Loved it. And I watched it again.
Sean Connery
watched it
being
again.
a prince.
All of the stars of this movie, Shelley Duvall, and I mean, they're all bit parts. They're not huge parts. It's all about the little people.
Yeah.
And I loved this movie. Maybe because I was a little person myself. Although I was, young. I'm super excited about it.
This is an obscure. I mean, it's a cult classic. I love Time Bandits. But like Terry Gilliam is not like somebody that's easily imitated or drawn from in a lot of ways.
See, I think that it's mostly the concept that they're going to borrow from. What it means for
So it'd be very loose.
very loose adaptation.
But even Terry Gilliam's style evolved over the years. This was back in his Monty Python aesthetic kind of thing. He went way into CG later. So I mean, I could see them doing a more modern adaptation of it that would be perfectly.
I just hope
Terry
it
Gilliam.
maintains a little bit of that weirdness, which is why it's a cult classic,
Absolutely.
right?
And I'm hoping that that's Apple's strategy. Like
That's not Apple's MO.
but maybe they could be latching on to this 80s, fad in a way that's also very artistic and high.
You admitted it's a fad.
Of course it's a fad. It's not going to last forever. I mean, I wish.
I wish next we're going to see the 90s revival.
Yep, exactly.
And then the early thousands. We all lived through that. Speaking of the 80s fads, Stranger Things Season 3, now we have a tentative release time frame, summer next year.
So it's a bit of a longer wait than for season 2.
Really disappointed because I always thought Halloween is just like a natural time to release that show.
Well, even the distance of the time between the first 2 seasons was more than 12 months, I think. But this is especially long. And apparently it's so that they can improve the effects because they're promising a bit more spectacle in season 3.
Do you think Netflix is ever going to move away from the binge model? And they're going to.
It's been so successful for them. Why would they do that?
It's been expensive for them. The HBO model is different, where they can put a lot of money on a few shows, Westworld, Game of Thrones, and a few miniseries, Sharp Objects, Succession, stuff like that, and then get people to commit to watching them, so they know that out of the 12 months they're subscribing, they're going to get like 5 months of the stuff they really want. With Netflix, they have to put a lot more money out there because once Stranger Things drops, it's going to be good for that weekend, and that's it. And the following weekend, you're going to need something new, a new fix. It's very, very expensive for them.
Don't you think there's a longer tail to their releases that they maintain buzz over a period of time because it takes longer to watch them?
I think
it's very short. Like, if you compare the buzz for Stranger Things release,
Yeah.
like from release, 3 weeks later, we're not talking about it. 3 weeks later after Westworld comes out, we're still talking about it because it takes 8 to 10 weeks for that season to unfold.
I think people talk about Stranger Things all year long. It's become a part of the consciousness.
I think also the new seasons invite people to go revisit the old seasons. And
I mean,
think
that
that's
makes
what
sense. I mean, the old
I think that works. I could see them doing like the 2-part seasons. They've already done that with like Voltron. Amazon did it with The Tick.
And that's just another way of spacing things out. Then it is less bingeable, right? It makes more sense for production. It makes more sense in terms of release timing. 4-episode dumps as opposed to 10-episode dumps.
Yeah, that's good.
That's a slippery slope.
No
It's
one,
1 episode a week.
No one likes the weekly cadence because they want to watch what happens after that cliffhanger. They want to watch the next episode. And that was what you had going for you when you were making Battlestar Galactica. And you wanted to entice your viewer to come back next week. But I don't know. I feel like it's unpleasant as a viewer. And I would rather have that.
Well, for someone like you can wait for the whole series to finish airing and then binge it all.
Well, now this is the counterpoint, which is that if you do that, I do wait in order to binge.
You miss the zeitgeist.
But then no one's talking about it anymore, right? Like after Westworld is over, Westworld season, what are we, 2?
Yep.
I haven't gone back to watch it because it's not a part of the conversation.
So one of the economic advantages of them dropping all at once is they do capture that weekend. People have to watch it all, and you're forced to have the water cooler talk for the whole show.
I guess.
I just don't know if it's sustainable for the growth rates they have.
It seems to be working well for the comedy specials and how
Yes,
they've generated buzz.
But those cost much less for production. Yeah. I do want to give a re-recommendation for Nanette.
Re-rec.
That Adam recommended on Still Untitled last week. And
Yeah, it's a difficult watch though, or it's not a typical watch, I would say. Don't expect a comedy special in the traditional sense of the word.
Wait, what is it and where is it?
It's on Netflix. It's Australian comedian, and it is deconstruction of a comedy special.
Hey,
to say the least.
Did you hear Hamilton is headed for theaters, possibly?
Yes.
They might be because we knew that they shot the production.
Yeah, before the original cast dispersed, before, I don't even know who was the first person to leave. Was it Lin-Manuel Miranda, who was the first one to leave the original cast? But with the original cast, they filmed 2 full performances.
With an audience or without?
I do not believe with an audience.
So, for the camera.
For the camera. We're blocking out the camera moves. And while Hollywood producers have been trying to find a way to adapt Hamilton for a 2-hour-long movie, it ended up being the best thing to do was to just release the recording of the performance. But the contract states that this will not be put in theaters until after maybe 2021.
That's a while from now.
It's a long
now, what
time
I
from
was
now.
hoping for was a Les Miserables version of Hamilton, where they take actors, and I'm sure Lin-Manuel would have played the lead. But in any case, the actors would have been on proper sets, but also properly mic'd, where you get actual vocal performances,
right,
live and in person. So it's not overdubbed. And at least this gets that. Even if it's the Broadway set, which is lower budget than what I was hoping for.
But the Broadway set allows for the creative blocking and the creative choreography within that confined space, which is such a big part of that show.
They can still do that.
No, come on. There's no comparing.
They can still do the creative set.
But it was the Broadway set. Like it was a set that was produced for stage production.
Yeah, but I understand that. I think a live action movie can still replicate
The
creativity of that
to
set.
re-choreograph it with the round and everything.
We'll see.
Gosh.
We'll see. I'm just glad that it will be live vocal performances. I couldn't see the New York show, so I'd love to see them.
Last thing, new Venom trailer dropped. I watched it. These two haven't. Don't watch it.
Don't watch it?
Don't watch it.
Because it's not good or because it spoils too much?
A little of both.
Oh, interesting.
I hate something on the internet. And
Stop it.
It's what's happening on YouTube.
You're talking about Snapchat, right?
No, I'm talking about YouTube.
The comment section.
No.
Oh, what is
I
it?
love all of you commenters out there.
Well, no, those guys are great.
Yeah, you're amazing. It's the fact that they this week changed so that aspect ratios are going to be represented on YouTube. So every video shows up in the aspect ratio that you expect, and
Without black bars.
And
A director's intent.
I find it a very jarring experience going from video to video.
Is it live right now?
It is
Yeah.
live right now. So what's happening is that a lot of videos in the pre-HD era were 4:3. And YouTube previously, any video that wasn't 16:9 was still boxed in a 16:9 frame with black bars. Whether it was a square video, 4:3 video, or the dreaded 9:16 vertical video. Now, and this is something they introduced in mobile a while back, now on the desktop side, youtube.com, if you find a vertical video, it will not be black barred.
What does that mean? You're going to zoom in on it?
It will.
or-
It will take up more of the vertical frame and push the detail description and push the comment
off the
section
screen.
down.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think you have to. You're on a weird mobile browser.
A mobile this is that.
Or I mean, sorry,
desktop.
you're on a scaled browser. I don't think you have it portrayed.
Yeah,
the way
it
it's
shows
supposed
up.
to be.
I think you notice it the most on the old 4:3 videos, and so I'll admit it. I watch a lot of old hockey highlights from like the 90s and 2000s, and watching them in 4:3, and then getting recommended and it constantly moving stuff around in my browser. I find it to be a disconcerting experience, and this whole as the director intended kind of garbage doesn't hold for me.
I understand why on desktop it doesn't make sense, because on desktop your screens are mostly 16:9, 16:10, and the web browser that you use is mostly that aspect ratio. On mobile, I think it should totally vertical video should play vertical video because your screens are 9:16.
For sure, but I'm talking about desktop.
Yeah, so it is a little weird, and the implementation, if you look at the Google product forums, has not been perfect. So some details, some of the prioritizing, Jeremy's still looking for an example of this working, and it just, I think the UI aspects need to be tweaked a little bit to really cater. I agree that a 9:16 video shouldn't be something you have to scroll down on a desktop to see. And now Kishore is an example for Jeremy for a 4:3 video. And yeah,
You guys are
no black bars.
You guys are nitpicking. And you can still full screen it. You get the whole thing. It's not like it's
No, but I
Putting-
just don't like how if you're watching multiple videos on YouTube, like it constantly is changing and things are shifting around on the screen.
as long as they're not cropping video content out or pushing it off the screen or covering things up. Aren't you happy?
The internet is for nitpicking things.
Okay.
You're getting all of this wrong.
Sorry. I'll improve my nitpicks.
Things that are user experience bugs that actually affect the user experience is perhaps the performance on your laptop. Maybe even a new MacBook that you bought just recently when the Apple updated them.
Oh, yeah.
And it turns out the new MacBook Pros had a thermal management bug in their code.
Oh, like Starlords.
Yeah, the machine did overheat over at California Extreme. So the new the bug is in High Sierra, and there is an update 10.13.6, and that apparently gives the new 15-inch MacBooks like a 70% speed boost, and the 13-inch ones can be up to 2x faster in graphics.
Whoa.
Yeah, so a big bug in thermal bottlenecking at load. So if you bought one of those laptops, I'm sure you may have read it, or you should have seen a pop-up for updating, and that's something that you should absolutely update. The
fix-
design flaw.
According to Loop Insight, the fix is straightforward and can be applied to all users very quickly.
Now, what would you consider a design flaw, a breakable screen, a design flaw? A screen that is breakable fundamentally.
Well,
You mean just like me dropping my phone on the ground and it cracking?
Yeah.
I don't think that's a design flaw.
if I were designing a product, hell yeah. I would not want to deal with those support issues, and I would not want to make a product that is so easily broken.
Well, it easily broken is one thing, right? Or just even breakable in general. Like how easily, like, let's say for a standard phone, and the phone screens on our phones have improved in durability over time, but over the past 10 plus years of having smartphones, it's just kind of built in. The fact that we have cases for it, it is accepted that screens are prone to breaking. It's not something, and maybe it's the form factor, because we don't expect that necessarily of laptops. Like, breaking cracked screens on laptops is not.
Yeah, but I don't drop my laptop on the ground.
That's a form factor thing. So as a design consideration, should phone companies endeavor for screens to be unbreakable?
We should have had this conversation 10 years ago.
Right.
But isn't this what some manufacturers are already doing to create differentiation? I feel like the Samsung phones don't break as much as the Apple ones.
Is that true?
That is a really good question. That's what Samsung wants you to believe, because Samsung is now demonstrating, they have an example of this on YouTube, a screen which they are calling an unbreakable panel. They are saying they've made a screen so resistant that an independent lab dropped it 24 times, put a mallet to it, and did not crack or break.
Independent test, do they mean the YouTube channel does it blend?
Yeah. I don't think it's completely unbreakable. I feel
Nothing
like
is completely unbreakable.
Exactly. But this is something that I think should be considered a feature, and we have not seen as a big selling point for phones from any of these companies.
No, come on. Apple tries to tell you they have improved the glass. You know, they've done it multiple times. First with the Gorilla Glass, and with their next generation Gorilla Glass.
Well, we've been waiting for those Sapphire screens for so long, and that was a failed R&D attempt.
But that they used that on the watch, right?
A very small size.
Yeah.
Right. And we don't hear about the watch cracking. The idea was that they had bought a company that was going to grow these Sapphire screens for phones, and they could not produce the yields that to their satisfaction, and so we still don't have full Sapphire screen phones on the iPhone.
I disagree. I think whenever we watch these big Apple presentations, anything about durability of the phones gets shunted to like the very end. They're always talking about resolution, and
absolutely,
clarity, all of those things above. Above anything else.
I don't know if they mentioned them in the keynotes. I just know that they mentioned them on the product pages.
Yeah, I think that the thing that we were hoping for is if they were so confident about the durability of the screens, they would make some type of repairs free. They would build it into the warranty. That would show real confidence in their screens. That would be a huge selling point.
That would be a really huge selling point.
Right. And I don't think we're at that point yet. And maybe Samsung developing their own quote-unquote unbreakable OLED panels will push Apple from a competitor standpoint to making unbreakable screens or very, very difficult to break screens a priority, because I think it should be a priority. And I think we take the fact that screens break relatively frequently, and that we take the fact that we go to malls and have screen repair kiosks all over the place for granted. I think that is an unacceptable reality of using these phones, and it's room for improvement.
Could you imagine needing to get a case for your flip phone?
God, no. Or your watch.
Yeah.
Right? Or your laptop screen.
It still bothers me much more that the screen replacement is locked to the manufacturer, so I don't control the ability to even fix and repair my own screen, more than this screen durability issue. Yeah. Because I at least have some control over screen durability.
You know, and this is something that Samsung may change their whole marketing tactic, because you've seen all those Samsung ads, the Samsung Galaxy 9 ads. They're negative driven. They don't tout the features of the phone as much as they try to make fun of Apple customers and Apple products. They turn these ads around so frequently, to the point where they have like fake Apple employees wearing Apple t-shirts in a fake Apple store talking about download speeds. It's bitter.
Yes, they're the bad guys.
Yeah, and I would rather have them, as opposed to feeding into this partisanship of phone ecosystems, talking about how their phones are good, and if they have actually a feature that they're proud of, like an unbreakable panel, then maybe I'll change their marketing around.
Don't you feel like we're still diving inexorably towards commodity phones at this point? I mean, like, we're so nibbling at the edges. I think Jeremy said this like 2 years ago, that there isn't much new that Apple could announce with your phone to make it that much better.
Yeah.
Peak
because
phone.
it's already as thin as you want. It does what you need. Everything else is just sort of like icing on the cake instead of the actual cake.
It's up to them to move beyond the form factor and give you things such as battery life, which I think we still all want more of, and features that we don't know we want from the camera, which is why they're hugely pushing for their computer vision software. And that's something on iOS 12 that they're unlocking more of. Their true depth camera. This is actually really interesting. I was thinking about this when we interviewed the Z Mini folks, right? The stereoscopic camera folks that make a attachment for your Rift and your Vive. They were talking about how they create a depth map of the world at a per frame basis, how their version of mapping the world. No geometry is stored. But one of their advantages of their depth camera is that their depth camera is high enough resolution that it matches the resolution of the optical camera you see. Right, so it is the optical camera, right? It's a per pixel depth map.
So every pixel is properly mapped, yeah.
Right. And that made me think about, well, the depth map that's generated by your dual camera iPhone on both the front and the back, is that a per pixel depth map as well? And it's not.
Right.
It's one of the reasons that when you do the portrait mode on your camera, the hairs sometimes aren't resolved perfectly. And there's some weird blurring, where it gets confused on certain things. And I was going around, I couldn't find anyone who could tell me what the actual resolution of their depth map is. And the only one I could find is Slashgear had a story. And they're saying, and maybe they pulled this out from white papers or some developer session, that with iOS 12, the depth map data actually is higher resolution. It's through software that they get higher resolution depth maps. And that on the rear camera, it's 2016 by 1512, and the front camera, which Apple calls a true depth camera, it's 1544 by 1160, which is about half the resolution of the actual cameras themselves. So still not per pixel, but half the resolution, and with iOS 12, apparently higher resolution for better portrait mode.
Yeah, I think that the depth map must be doing some combination of the depth sensor with optical interpretation, like edge mapping, right? Because I don't think that the actual depth map or the true depth camera is very high res at all, like nowhere near that. It doesn't have that many dots that it projects.
The dots are different, though.
Yeah, how so?
Well, the dots are not the stereo, right? The stereo, like
the dots are for the depth mapping, right? No, they don't use that for that.
No, the dots are just for the face.
No,
I don't think the dots are for the stereo depth map.
Oh,
or it could be two different systems on the front and the back. The back is definitely two different a two camera system, two optical camera system in comparing images.
right.
But they're different field of views. Right, one's a wider angle, one's more telephoto. So it's not exactly the same as when you just have two lenses side by side. They're exactly the same, matched up.
Well, one thing that this article did say was that with iOS 12, the developers will be given that depth, that portrait matte, essentially.
Yeah, the masking.
Because I guess currently developers, they are given the raw data, but they have to work it out for themselves, where the edge of the person is. So when you're doing that kind of fake depth of field effect, they have to do some manual interpretation. But now Apple's going to be giving them this beautiful black and white, this is the outline of the person. If it detects a person, it will provide that. And then developers will be able to use that. So hopefully there'll be some neater,
free green screen,
interesting apps coming out. Yeah.
Other things coming out in terms in the leaked world, DJI was supposed to have an event a while ago and they canceled it. And the expectation was that there would be new Mavic drones announced and maybe released. The event still hasn't happened yet, but some marketing material has revealed what those new products are supposed to be. And it's two new drones, a Mavic 2 Pro and also a Mavic 2 Zoom.
Okay.
And it basically, the leak of this advertisement has forced DJI to admit that there are two new products
Confirm.
come out. Yeah. This is really interesting. Two different lens options.
So the Mavic 2 Pro apparently has a 1-inch CMOS sensor, which is massive, right, for a drone?
Yeah, that's going to be some nice pixels.
Yeah, so that's intriguing to me depending on where the price point comes out. The zoom makes a little less sense to me. Like, why do you want optical zoom on a drone?
A 2x optical zoom from 24 millimeter to 48 millimeter. So you can do interesting shots. You could do in the air a Spielberg dolly zoom.
So you think this will appeal to filmmakers,
Yeah.
amateur, and yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think changing the focal length of drone photography, I think is going to help make drone cinematography look more interesting.
That's certainly going to complicate the shooting those shots. I mean, if
Oh, yeah.
you're already managing so many different aspects, now you're also managing a zoom.
Well, at some point, it shouldn't be just one person doing it. One
Yeah.
person should be flying it, and one person should be.
But it's still
running the camera.
coordination, you know.
Do you think you'll be able to do that soon? Actually, have two different interfaces to the same drone.
You can already.
One with flight. Oh, you can.
Doesn't the one of the
Inspire.
the Inspire has that?
Lets
yeah.
you do two people.
Oh, interesting.
I can't wait. And the Mavic has been hugely successful for DJI. It really has kind of overshadowed the older sibling, the Phantom. And whenever DJI has its next event, we'll ping them and try to learn more.
What would the advantages of that bigger sensor be? Could you do better low light?
Better low light. I mean, you're not supposed to be shooting in low light anyway, in darkness, but for sunset, sunset
yeah.
and sunrise.
That could be great.
Yeah. Or indoor, just less grainy footage, better depth of field. Right now, most drone video is really flat. But you could, if you want to get close to a subject, then you actually have some depth of field. New Sony 4K TVs?
Yeah, well, this is weird because they usually do their big annual announcements at CES, which of course they did, but now they're also doing some mid-year announcements with what they're calling their new Master Series TVs.
What is this?
It's their new high-end TV, and you know, there's both OLED and LCD models. The only interesting feature I find is that they have this weird Netflix calibrated mode. So
what does that mean?
Yeah, so I don't know if it only works with Netflix that's going to be built into the TV, which Netflix is in almost every TV now, or if it will work with Apple TV and other, over-the-top or set-top boxes. But it is a mode that they've collaborated with Netflix on, so that what you see, the pixels you see, are exactly as Netflix or the creators intended.
Does that mean there's like a processor on board the TV?
No, I think it's a calibration. It's just calibration setting.
Yeah,
it means that like
in sync.
Some people who watch sports have the true motion stuff turned on, and they have to manually turn it off when they flip on HBO or Netflix. And now this TV will probably recognize that you're turning on Netflix and automatically turn off the smooth motion.
But the weird thing is, like, some people like that. Right? I mean, some people like the smooth motion. Some people like their color settings the way that they are. And do you really know any different if you have your TV set up the way you like it and you're watching Netflix and enjoying it? Are you bothered by the fact that it's maybe not what the creators intended? Now, I'm all about doing what the creators intended. I just don't know if this is like...
Well, there you go. I don't.
Feature.
That's why I think on the flip side, the other argument is that there is really not that big of a difference. And that if you tuned it yourself, you would be able to get these settings. But the fact that they have this marketing lingo, as the creators intended, Master Series, that's a selling point. And that some people will just blindly accept that and feel like they got extra value out of it. And for them, that'll be worth the extra money.
Do you want more control? Like most TVs right now, you have very limited control on what you can set. You can like turn on and off some of these settings. And tweak them slightly, but do you want like full like PC-like control of what some of the video settings would be like, as if there was a GPU on board?
No.
I mean, I guess ideally I would...
Just because it's too much of a hassle?
I think you get enough control as it is. I don't know. You go on the AVS forums, and there's always your TV has got a thread. And there's some guy in it that spent 3 weeks dialing in the brightness and the saturation settings. And you just take his settings and you apply them to your TV and it works. It's good enough. I guess, I don't know. Why does there need to be a Netflix calibrated mode? Why can't there just be a Blu-ray calibrated mode or just like a general...
that Netflix subscribes to?
It's not TV. It's Netflix.
I guess, yeah.
It's not Blu-ray. It's Netflix.
There should just be a setting... all the TVs ship with their default mode is that one that is on in Best Buy, which is oversaturated, and all the True Motion is on, and it's horrible.
Do you think they'll have sub modes like Netflix, but I have Comcast?
I don't know.
Okay, a couple other things. I like this story. This was not really a news story, but it's something I wanted to discuss. Popular Science had an article about the age-old debate of USB thumb keys and whether you need to, through software, eject them on your computer before removing them. Now, do you want to take a guess as to what Popular Science's prescription was at the end of the story?
I would guess it's okay to rip it out.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I would guess too, because all of this is about delayed writing, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah. They want
speed of light, right? So
they wrote this whole story and said that at the end, you know what, it's okay for you just to pull out the USB key. Most of the time, it won't have a problem. I disagree.
Well, the USB key is really no different than a hard drive, where it's going to have things that are written to it, and sometimes those things are written delayed, like Kishore said.
Yeah.
And you don't want to rip it out before the file allocation table and the bits have been written to the drive, and then everything is screwed up.
But
you could actually corrupt. On Windows, the eject process sometimes takes a long time. Like, it's a problem with Windows OS. I've had cases where I've had to had a hard drive plugged into my computer, and I've had to turn off the computer to force it to disconnect the hard drive because it would still be thinking and trying to do some process. And if you're working with an exFAT drive where you have it compatible, like in our production environment, we need those to work on both Mac and PC. You gotta eject, or else it's not going to work both ways.
Oh, there you go.
I wonder what the like if you're not using that case where you have a heavily used thing that's doing a lot of data writing. If you're just using a USB key, like we got to be talking about like milliseconds that any delayed writing to like a USB stick is.
It's not like you would think if it was writing right now. That would be the case. But sometimes they delay these processes in order to prioritize other processes.
It's just good practice.
I'm ripping it out.
Oh, it hurts me to hear you say that.
I properly eject.
Yes.
And when I don't, every time I get a little nervous.
Max.
Yes.
Max
On
hate
Max.
you.
Yeah, Max hate you. Why would you want that notification? It tells you you've done something wrong, and then you freak out, and you plug it back in to make sure your data isn't lost, and then you got to properly eject.
I don't do that.
You don't do that? You just like hope, next time I put this in, I hope all the data's still there.
That's how I live my life.
Oh, no.
I'm constantly
on the edge.
in a state of hope.
All right, let's switch over to some extra car talk. First of all, we're not going to talk about Tesla just yet, but maybe some competitors to Tesla. There is an upcoming car that there's no picture of it yet, but Volvo has a Model 3 competitor that they've announced called the Polestar 2 EV that will cost between $40,000 and $65,000.
So basically the same as Model 3.
Yep, and have a base range, not an upgraded premium range, of 350 miles.
Holy cow.
That's a lot.
Isn't that more than the extended?
Like more than the extended on Model 3.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
My negative on this, that name is awful.
Polestar?
Polestar.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Volvo had a concept car called the 40.2, and that one looks very modern. Big rims. Almost, it looks bigger than a sedan. Like, it looks taller than a sedan.
It just seems lifted up.
Yeah, almost like a hybrid. Doesn't look super aerodynamic, actually. It looks almost more like a transformer than anything.
It's not very sexy.
And we think that the Polestar 2, which may have design influences from this concept car, will make its appearance next March at the Geneva Motor Show.
So normally we expect when more competition comes that prices will start to slowly creep down. I kind of don't expect that. I expect prices to keep kind of even inching up a little bit based on what Tesla's doing with the Model 3.
Yeah, and Volvo will have the advantage then of having tax rebates that people buying Teslas won't have, so they can increase the price, get more margin, and people will equivocate that with the tax rebate, the federal tax rebate, at least in the United States.
Wait, what is that? What is the rule on that? You have to sell 350,000 cars or something like that?
200,000?
Is that what it is?
I think it's 200,000 cars, and which Tesla said they've done already. Just past that.
Is that across your whole
across
brand?
all
your
EV,
fleet.
all your fleet,
Okay.
every model you have, and this is why some people were speculating that they waited till they were shipping more cars to Canada ahead of time. So it's only in the
Oh,
U.S.
interesting.
And then
Now, one last question. That's only for EVs, though, right?
Only for EVs.
Obviously, Volvo's ship more than that.
Right.
So this is only for their EV fleet.
that's correct.
Got it.
And then after they've reached that milestone, the tax rebate gets half. Oh, actually, the tax rebate is still the full amount for the quarter to finish out the quarter, and then the quarter following will be halved, and then halved after that.
Got it.
So the speculation on Tesla's side is that they did not sell their 200,000th EV until after the second quarter, and so that people in the third quarter in July would still get that full rebate, and then in the fourth quarter, and then as well.
I'm not an economist, but I am a math nerd, so I hope they keep having it so it gets like 1/64th the rebate.
But there's always a rebate.
It's always a rebate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just exponential decay.
Yeah, yeah. And for people who are not picking up their Teslas, next year there probably won't be any, like the rebate will be much lower next year. So to incentivize new buyers, there might be a new redesign, at least of the interior. So this is a leak from Electric, and they posted renders of the interiors of the Model S and the Model X, which posit that by maybe second half of next year, the Model S and the Model X will have that single screen that the Model 3 does.
They're
in the
going
center.
all in on that design, that minimalist design.
Very minimal design. The single dash may require some re-engineering of the interior of the chassis for that single dash panel in the back and the airflow. There is actually a panel behind the steering wheel. So there's a
like
render,
a speedometer display
a very small one.
right in front of the driver,
in front of
which
one.
I think is great. I don't know how you feel about your speedometer being on your TV screen, but I think it's good to have in front of you.
Well, I think with the Model 3, the idea was that people thought of an experiment, right? I think even Tesla, from the UI perspective, UX perspective, they knew internally it would work, but they didn't know if people would accept it. And it has been embraced by people. People say, and I can test it, it's easy to use with only one display panel in the center. And now maybe it's less considered a cost-cutting measure and more of an autopilot, self-driving, facilitating measure. Tesla wants to make a car with no steering wheel because then it's just full autopilot all the time. And the next step to that is just one panel. I think we have some sounds outside this room.
I always thought that this design was better suited for autopilot. Like, from a safety perspective, I'm not so sure that having all of your information on the screen to your right is the best decision. But if your car is driving itself, great.
Yep.
I don't want all those distractions. In which case, this design is better suited for that.
I don't think we're going to see a car with no steering wheel for a while.
Well, yeah, I'm sure Tesla would love to make a car with no steering wheel, but I totally agree with you. But I do think that this coming out next year is probably perfectly in line with what this design is intended for.
Which is, you're thinking it's...
It'll be released in line with some full autopilot.
Right. And also the screen is also landscape orientation, not portrait orientation, at least according to the renders, which is different than the current cars, which are these embedded 17-inch or 17-inch portrait orientation screens. So consistent UI across all their cars, I think makes sense. I think having that screen pop up and not be like flush against the dash, I think that makes a lot of sense.
I always thought that the expanded instrumentation in the Model S might be considered an upsell for people from the Model 3. So the fact that they're actually going to the Model 3 design for the S makes me think, well, what are they going to add to the S to make it, to differentiate it?
It's got to be range.
Well, it can't just be range. It's got to be, that's a much more expensive car. There's got to be accoutrements. There has to be features, options, technology in there that you don't get in the Model 3.
I think you're voicing a lot of the concerns of people in the Tesla community right now who realize the Model 3 is a great car.
Fair enough.
One final story. Hey, Labo, new Labo sets.
This is cool.
I'm actually pleasantly surprised because Labo got really panned in a lot of reviews.
It did?
Yeah, I mean a lot of
Shocked.
people.
I'm actually really shocked about that because it's amazing.
Yeah, because it was a really great user experience. I thought, and building it was a joy. But I think people took advantage of the fact that it's cardboard,
Right.
And made fun of it. So what's in the new kit?
Well, the 3 vehicles. It's a vehicle kit, and
Well, it's kind of one game, right? It's one game that uses
three vehicles.
Three vehicle
and
kits.
The three vehicles are a plane, a submarine, and a car.
Yeah, and your vehicle in the game appears to transform into whatever vehicle you are equipped. You've equipped your Joy-Cons to use.
This is probably the very important part of the evolution of Labo, is the software aspect. And the fact that this is not mini games and unified games, they want to make sure that people are actually playing these things. Because even the most interactive one of the Labos, the robot kit, after a little bit, it's kind of gets repetitive.
Well, that's my fear about this, is that I think that the kits look like a ton of fun to build. There's all kinds of things you can do with them. But the game, I'm not so sure. Like, the game is not yet selling me on buying this product.
Do they ever tie a AAA title to a Labo controller? Like, are we going to get a Mario something?
Dude.
Mario Kart with a Labo driving controller.
Now you're talking. Like, that would sell.
Mario is something. I don't think it's an original. I don't think it's a version of an older game. I think it's the same characters with a new take.
See, I think they could retrofit an old game and have Labo work with it, as opposed to, and then they can have people just play it normally. And I think that would sell the crap out of Labo.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of buying, like, the Mario Kart wheel, why don't you build one with your kid from this Labo kit?
The best Labo stuff also takes advantage of the mobility of the Switch screen. Whether it's the fishing or the piano, the fact that the screen becomes part of the cardboard.
I didn't see that in this at all.
No, this is very much like the robot, where it's played on your TV, which is a little bit of a disappointment, because I think some of the magic of Labo is once you plug those Joy-Cons in there and the screen, the cardboard comes alive.
Mm-hmm. And
here it reads a little bit like having the plastic Wii steering wheel for playing Mario Kart.
And, in a couple years, there won't be steering wheels in cars. So, I mean, this feels dated already.
There you go. Switch is simulating your Tesla dashboard. That's a partnership that will never happen. All right, that does it for this week's technology news. Let's move over to some tilt warning.
Oh, my gosh. Where's that thing? There it is. I'm a pinball nerd. Just to my point. Finally, pinball. That makes me very happy. All right, so you wanted a few details on Pinburgh, which if you are in the Pittsburgh area, or if you're anywhere within driving range, you need to try to get yourself there next year, because it's a blast for all skill levels of pinball playing. It's good sportsmanship all around. It's friendly people, and it's the best organized event that I've ever attended when it comes to any kind of tournament. It's incredible. These guys have outdone themselves year after year, and I thank the organizers, and I hope you guys can get there. And if you're not into pinball, you just want to see some old games, there's also a lot of that too. Of course, Bay Area had California Extreme, which is kind of the same thing, but it's a bit more packed, given being the Bay Area. There's a few more people here. And
people fly in for that.
Less convention space. But, yeah, so the Pinburgh situation was fantastic. The only real news that I have to share is that there's a company that's been remaking classic pinball games, and they started with Medieval Madness, which for a while there was maybe the highest coveted pinball game out there.
So much fun.
It's a great game. It's one of those games that kept going up in value. Like, originally it sold for $4,000 and routinely now sells for over $8,000.
What?
The old one, and then so of course the company said, well, let's make more, because
So remake.
they're so valuable.
They got the license.
So yeah, so they bought up the license and they made more. So they made more Medieval Madnesses. It was a big hit. Then they did the same with Attack from Mars.
Oh, great. Yep.
Which is another great game, actually by the same designer. And they just announced their third game, which is going to be Monster Bash.
Oh.
Which is the first game from them that actually has licenses that aren't owned by Williams Bally. They have the Universal monsters. So you got Frankenstein and Creature from the Black Lagoon and Dracula. And it's a fantastic, fun game. And the neat thing is this game company, they add new things. So they redesign all the graphics in the screen, and they colorize it, and they give you a huge screen that goes in the back as opposed to the smaller one. and they add neat little lighting effects to the game. So I can't wait to see what they do with this, because this is a great classic game. And if you're interested in that game, they'll probably sell it for about the same, like $8,000 range, which is about what a Monster Mash goes for now. But you can get a brand new one.
$500.
Yeah, well, they have different tiers too. You know, you get the small screen, the big screen, the whatever options you want. It's like buying a car.
Before we go on, are there any games you played at Pinburgh that you really recommend people checking out if they have the like anything that you really loved or rediscovered pinball wise that you I think I've heard a few people be like, what are your recommendations for pinball? And I'm like, I'm not the one that plays.
Just play pinball. You know, just get out there and see what you can find. I mean, if you go to events like this, you can pretty much find any game that you want to find. You know, there's rare games like Safecracker, which is actually a pinball game that would dispense tokens that would roll down the glass if you won, and then you could grab it, and then you could actually put the token, you could keep it, or you could put it back into the game, and it would give you a new mode. It would change the entire game and give you a brand new mode to play that you could only access if you got that token. I've actually never won a token from it. It's a hard game. So you can find that at Pinburgh. You can probably find it at California Extreme. But then it's really about finding the classics that you can't buy anymore. You don't see on location. So there's tons of interesting games. One of the games that I played in competition was The Lost World, like Bally's, I forget, like The Lost World something or other. It wasn't Jurassic Park. It was something else. It's crazy shots going over ramps that have no rails, upper flippers like going over these crazy hills. It's just cool to play all these old games. There was an era like in the late 80s, early 90s where they were doing weird stuff, and you can find all those games for you at events like this. They're happening all over the place. There's Texas, there's a huge one, so just look into it. I highly recommend going and enjoying yourselves.
Is there a way for people who want to get pinball in their homes, is there a soundproofing for pinball strategy?
That's a great question, because it is a concern.
Yeah.
When there are neighbors involved or even other family members.
Yes.
Unfortunately, there's only so much you can do for the clicky-clack of the solenoids. Some people, they put sound dampening material into the cabinet, like you would, like we have on the walls in here. They would put that into the game. You certainly could put rubber feet underneath your legs.
Okay.
That helps, especially going through the floor. But
it travels.
Yeah, and like you can actually lower the sound, like as far as the speakers go. You can install headphone jacks in games now, even retrofit old games with headphone jacks.
But you're going to hear the solenoid. That's the biggest
always
sound.
Hear those jets firing. And
twack, 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 twack.
Slingshots.
Ding, 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 ding.
Yeah. There were some interesting things I saw at Pinburgh. There was a table that was, two people could sit at it, but it looked like an old NES controller. See this, Norm?
A giant NES controller.
Classic NES controller.
That's nice.
But it's an actual NES controller.
It functioned?
So you
giant
can
buttons.
It actually was hooked up to
the AB is like the size of your hand.
Exactly. Yeah. It was pretty great. There was this old game, this Sega game I'd never heard of called Space Tactics, which the neat thing is when you go to the arcades, you see things you'd never see in emulators. And with this game did this weird projection where the video was overlaid on one of those reflective right-angle displays.
Okay.
So the
hologram effect, Pepper's Ghost.
Exactly. So you see through it to a background, but then augmented on top of that, when you were firing, you were like in a laser cannon, and you fire lasers. It has this stereoscopic effect where these lasers go from the sides towards this projected screen, which is itself a hologram. And it was just a really cool effect, and it's neat to see just games based on some interesting effect that somebody came up with. That was cool. There was a really great vendor there called Artovision. I'm sure you can Google it. They have this idea where they would take a screenshot from a classic game, so usually something from the 80s, and they cut all the objects out in Photoshop, and then they layer them on clear acrylic.
So it looks layered.
Yeah,
like a shadow box.
They take a shadow. Well, they develop their own shadow box frame, but then they have 4 layers of clear acrylic, and they've cut out all of the art so that it actually, if you take a look at that,
I see. Yeah,
they layer it as if it was.
Do they
actually
fill in
3D?
Fill in underneath?
They do.
They do. Okay.
So often it's a solid color, but often it's not. So the more complicated drawn artwork, they actually have to go in and painstakingly fill it in.
Because you want to view it from multiple angles.
Exactly.
You want parallax.
And I was so intrigued by that. It turns out they're tested watchers themselves. And I had a lot of fun talking to them. But I recommend checking them out. I actually bought 2. They had a King's Quest, which like you don't see Sierra games at these events ever. So he had a King's Quest there, and he's making me a Space Quest 1.
How much do they go for?
$120.
Okay, 4 layers of acrylic. All right.
Yeah, but it's like
Full color?
it's sizable. It's the size of like a an old computer monitor.
Nice.
And yeah, and the print quality is excellent. They print directly on acrylic.
It's very cool.
Yeah, this is very neat.
RO Vision.
What are we doing? Moment of science?
Let's do it.
Now it's time for a moment of science.
Impossible Burgers. Everyone here has had one?
Yes.
Okay, well, now the FDA says you can have one.
Thank you.
Oh.
So Impossible Burgers had to go through, had gotten FDA approval at the sort of baseline level, but there's a secondary approval called a no questions letter, where the FDA certifies that the ingredient that's used in the Impossible Burgers, that's called heme, it's a version of hemoglobin that's derived from soy and legumes, is actually safe to eat, and that way, with that no questions letter, they can distribute their burgers to larger chains. So stuff like a Burger King or something like that would be able to carry the Impossible Burger then. Well, the FDA finally gave that approval. It was met with some weird controversy online because in order to do this, they had to do a rat study. So they had to feed about 180 rats high levels of this soy hemoglobin. This is just how FDA tests are done with any sort of edible item like this. PETA came down and said, don't buy the Impossible Burger because they conducted this rat study.
Oh, my goodness.
Which is this sort of like weird balance, because you would think that PETA would be in favor of this, given how they're taking a segment of the population that wants to eat meat and giving them an alternative. And what's sort of funny about it is Impossible Burger said they consulted with a PETA scientist about the right way to conduct this study and did it, and PETA says no, that didn't happen. Anyways, it's sort of like a funny thing. All of this like points to this quirk in the system of how FDA regulations work around certifying things that certain food components, so that large companies with a lot of distribution can use them. But in any case, you can expect to see Impossible Burgers, if they can scale up production, shipping out to more and more places around the country. It's not as good as a meat burger to me, but I think I would order the Impossible Burger if it was more widely available.
That's a good alternative for anyone who does eat veggies.
Yeah, I mean, it still depends on how you cook it.
Yeah.
So, like, the White Castle one probably stinks because it's made by White Castle still and cooked the way they cook White Castle burgers.
Dude, I would eat that in a heartbeat. What are you talking about?
Ugh. No White Castle for me.
It's like a Krispy Kreme bun.
Ugh. No. I'm getting bad heartburn already just thinking about it. A new report came out this week about the ISS. The White House announced earlier this year they would like to stop funding the ISS by 2025.
Right.
Congress would like to keep funding for the ISS through 2028. NASA currently spends between $3 and $4 billion a year supporting the ISS. Most of that goes to private contractors like Boeing that does the actual sort of maintenance. Boeing has said that the ISS can fly with the components on board through about the end of 2028, potentially 2030.
And one of the proposals from the government is to privatize the ISS.
The White House specifically has wanted to say we should privatize this. The NASA Inspector General came out with a report saying there was basically no business case for a private company that would want to take over the ISS. There just isn't benefits because of how much money is outlaid by NASA to maintain this. And there just isn't the economic incentive for them to continue to do it. And the whole idea around privatizing the ISS is maybe a private company would find cost savings versus what NASA could do. It also lowers the outlay to to NASA that taxpayers are making. But at this point, they don't see many good options on the table. And so I think we're careening towards just the ISS going into planned obsolescence, probably in the late 2020s at this point.
All right.
2 more stories, and I think this is the best science story of the week. So right down the street, probably like 5 blocks from where we are, there's a scientist, Shinya Yamanaka. He works at the Gladstone Institute. He also has a joint appointment at a university in Tokyo. A few years ago, he took skin cells, like if we scrape some skin cells from Jeremy right here, and actually through a really specific technique was able to revert those skin cells into stem cells. This technique is called Induced Pluripotent stem cells. It won him a Nobel Prize and his collaborators in 2012. This was a monumental achievement. Now in Japan, we have our first human clinical trial where they're using skin cells reverted into stem cells and being injected into a human to regrow neurons to treat Parkinson's. They have 8 patients they're signing up for this study where they're going to be doing this. The whole idea of this is sort of twofold. Is like if it's your cells, the rejection risk goes way down. And because it's harvesting from this, it takes also the ethical implications of harvesting stem cells from an embryo out of the equation. They still have to, like, the problem from this going from the basic research to the application is multifold. One is how do you scale that process? Because it's not like I can just scrape Jeremy's skin and like a day later have iPS cells. Like, so there's been a lot on the manufacturer of this. And then just the safety of doing this. Like, will this actually be efficacious? There is some hints that this could work for Parkinson's in a limited degree. So I'm closely watching this study and what's happening with these patients. This could be like one of those massive breakthroughs if successful. It'll probably fall somewhere in between. But I think this is the most exciting study I've heard about in a long time. And yes, it's a very limited sample size of only 8 patients, but we're talking about Parkinson's here. So it's normal. We should also acknowledge this morning, Alan Alda went out on TV and acknowledged that he has been diagnosed with Parkinson's. He's known about it for a few years. And he's been quite open about it in private, but proclaimed it publicly. And I think it's always interesting. We know the huge number of Americans or just global population that's affected by Parkinson's, but we have very few examples of this, beyond Michael J. Fox. And now Alan Alda coming out and saying it. I think we'll have more and more talk about this in the future. Lastly, one recommendation for a video to watch. A set of researchers bought an off-the-shelf robotic hand and applied some machine learning and AI using some cameras to see if they could, through simulations, teach this robotic hand, this off-the-shelf robotic hand.
It's really off-the-shelf because it looks really high-tech.
It is a high-tech looking robotic arm, but it is a private company makes it.
Got it.
So, I mean, it's not like we can go down to Best Buy and get one of these, but it is something that multiple companies could purchase. And so what they did is they tried to get this robotic hand to really mimic human behavior in its ability to take like a simple cube with different letters on it and have it be manipulated to show certain letters to the face. And by conducting these simulations, they're able to actually have it conduct this rotation in a very human-like way fairly quickly.
I would be so much faster than this thing.
You would be faster than this thing
But
because
it did it
humans are amazing.
Like repetitive learning. And
In a simulation, not by actually doing it in the real world. That's
so
what's
it's in
interesting
software,
about it.
And it did it through visual.
Yeah, so it took
study.
in camera data, and then it applied this machine learning through a simulation, and it simulated like, I don't know, something like 1,000 repetitions of this.
I'm curious what the robotic hand, what the input is. Does it have feedback in terms of the tension?
I don't know. I don't know about this robotic hand. That's a good
you don't think
question.
it's all just visual, or it's just watching itself?
Like, does it know that's gripped too hard?
Right.
Yeah.
It never drops it. That's what's also interesting, is that it maybe prioritizes that safety over
This also will solve the screen breaking problem. We all get robotic hands. We'll
right.
never drop it.
Gyros for everyone. Over the weekend, I watched it came out, I think, a year and a half ago, documentary about Bill Nye on Netflix.
Oh, yeah, that's been making the rounds at like film festivals and stuff.
Highly recommended.
Yeah.
If you're interested in about Bill Nye, the
Science
person,
guy.
Bill Nye, the science guy, but how the show got started, him as a person, his legacy. I think there are some editing issues I have with this because it doesn't really get to a conclusion, but it follows him from going from convention to convention, his infamous debates with the Creationist Museum, the founder of the Creationist Museum, and then also him fulfilling Carl Sagan's legacy.
Did he talk about his parents at all in the documentary?
He does. And
Yeah,
family.
I interviewed Bill like last year, and I thought that was one of the most fascinating things. His mom was a code breaker in the war.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
The VR Minute. Virtual reality this week.
All right. So, last night, the three of us boarded the Starship Enterprise,
D.
NCC 1701, not A, not B, not C, but D, and completed some missions in Star Trek in the Bridge Crew VR.
I don't know what you guys hadn't played this yet. I thought for sure you'd play this the whole time I was at Pinburgh.
No,
You guys
it
didn't.
was our first time playing in
Saddle up
Enterprise D.
till last night.
It was fun.
That question mark, that hesitation at the end, that's exactly how I feel.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
I
we ha-
wanted more.
I don't think we've played enough.
I don't think there's enough to play.
Well, that's true of Bridge Crew. Like, there's just not enough there. But we didn't play through all of the scenarios yet. I'd be curious to play some more.
I think there's a lot of potential there.
Yeah.
It's just like they've built this infrastructure for simulation. Like if you lean into playing like you are a captain of a starship,
It is good for role playing.
Yeah, I mean, it
that's actually a really good point. It needs a D&D. It needs a dungeon master. It needs a DM.
That's what the captain's supposed to
I feel
be.
like that's Captain Kishore.
It harkens back to me about one of my first VR experiences was Keep Talking and No One Explodes.
Yeah.
And this harkens back to that, this sort of co-op VR. You have to communicate to actually move things forward. But
it needs Starfleet. It needs someone on the other side, asymmetrical, sending the missions, the objectives to go actually travel across the quadrant and visit planets and visit subsystems and then spawn enemies and have surprises.
Well, this is there's
all
so
very
much
flat.
so much more you could do with this.
You could, and it's all the groundwork is there. We impulse to a subsystem, and there's debris and there's anomalies and there's space stations, and you never encouraged to do anything with those.
Nothing ever comes up on the view screen. You never hit like Romulans that threaten you in how they talk to you.
Think of that. If I had a laptop with a asymmetrical UI to DM the game, I could webcam in on screen the objectives.
I see.
Message from Starfleet.
You're suggesting not even the captain is the DM.
No,
that
someone else.
God who is
Yes.
orchestrating everything.
Yes.
That's a really good idea.
Like a Starfleet command.
Yeah, that's a really good.
On the positives, the setting, being on that bridge.
Yeah. Oh, it's immersive. It's great.
It's really good. Is it worth $15? I mean, it's up to you. Gary thinks this is the best VR experience to be had.
I think Gary needs to play more VR.
Now, one of the funniest times I've ever had in VR was when he was captain. And he said, everyone should just feel free to do what you think is best.
That's how Will emptied all of our torpedoes on one ship. I mean, it's a totally fun experience, but it has some work to do. I will say the infrastructure for this game, the Uplay system, all of that stuff sucks.
It's unfortunate. They're just jealous of Steam. They want it. And they have the ability to make you sign up.
It took us a good half hour to get into the game.
Well, I had to disable every other audio device to make it recognize my Rift mic, which was a pain in the ass. I think we got to spend some more time in it.
Yeah,
I'm looking forward to it.
We have not played the Borg mission.
No, and that's supposed to be very hard, by the way.
I want it to be harder. I want more urgency.
Yeah.
Right now, a lot of like the power distribution and management and repairs, you're not encouraged to take advantage of that because you can just wait it out.
Well, they've changed the ops department substantially. So now there's this whole mechanic of being able to move crew around the ship. And I assume that it helps repair those stations if there's more crew there. It's kind of an FTL thing where the more crew you have in rooms, the more powered up they are. But yeah, we should play some more. Rec Royale had a new patch that they released just as I left town, so I haven't had a chance to play it yet. But it's they've now finished the what do they call it? Rec Royale, where you can now officially do squads.
Oh, I'm excited.
They previously had a mode where if you wanted to group up and do their Battle Royale mode, which they call Rec Royale, if you wanted to do it in groups, you had to go in this other room, which was off of the main path. Now you can officially go in there, and there's the comms, so that if you get too far apart, you switch to walkie-talkies, which I think is interesting. I assume if the only people left standing are people from your squad, the game's over, so you don't have to kill each other.
Guess what? Groups of 3.
And it's limited to groups of 3, right?
Groups of 3, perfect for us.
Yeah,
Let's
exactly.
squad up. Did they increase the number of players who jump into the island?
Well, you really want more players.
I want more players.
I want more players too. There's enough room.
Yeah, double it.
Come on, esports ready. Let's do it. We got to get on the competitive Rec Royale squad circuit.
They
I'm
did
all
not.
for trying it, but I don't have a problem with 16. I think it works well.
The satisfaction is not there.
I think with more players, there'll just be more encounters. And right now, the early game can be very slow.
Yeah, you want the feeling like that if you're knocked out early, it sucks.
If you want to be in an encounter early, jump out with other people and land where they land.
Yeah, but there's this, I think a good half of the group that jumps out just doesn't encounter anyone for the first 5 to 10 minutes.
By design. I think they don't want to. They want to loot for a while first.
Yeah, and I think that makes the gameplay slow.
Yeah. I'd be up to trying a bigger group.
There's a game you can play if you want that experience. It's called PUBG, where you loot for like the first 15 minutes before you encounter anyone.
Is it slow? I don't play a whole lot of PUBG. All right.
Slow. It's a balance.
Yeah.
Just released today, well, 2 days before from when you're listening to this, a Hellblade, which was a console game from Ninja Theory, and they were simultaneously working on a VR version of Hellblade, and that is unlocked. Whoever buys Hellblade, it's on, I think, $30 on Steam.
They said there was
Gets the VR version.
They said there was no business model for making a VR
No.
version because there's just not the number of units out there. So they're just giving it away,
Yeah.
which is great.
Yeah, it's a full game. And the game is was well reviewed on console. Had great. They did great facial animation, great audio experience.
You said
So-
Joey loved it. yeah?
Joey loved it. It's on Switch as well, and I can't wait to play it on VR. In VR, they did some interesting camera movements as well, switching to third person.
Yeah, they said that obviously if you're converting a game, that's the trick. Keep your players from throwing up.
The one thing that is concerning is that they went for really high end graphics requirements, a 1080
1080, a standard 1080?
standard 1080. Needed.
GTX is required?
so,
Oh
yeah.
my god.
Yeah.
I only have the 1070 or something.
Yeah, we'll see how it performs.
All right.
And then finally, Magic Leap's supposed to come out this year.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy? We're toward the end of the summer.
Well,
Oculus Connect is right around the corner.
yeah, we just got invited, by the way.
Yeah. Oh, I just registered
How'd you, like during the show?
during the show.
Oh my gosh, you're way ahead of me.
And more details about Magic Leap, as we have not still put it on yet, including the field of vision. 40 degrees horizontal, 50 degrees diagonal, 4:3 aspect ratio are the specs, which are, yes, higher than HoloLens, but I think if you look at the cone of the field of view,
Yeah.
it really feels like they're encouraging these elements to be further away from you than closer to you, not as much near field as some people may have been hoping for.
I'm just glad to see them tempering excitement, as opposed to.
I
all
think
of
they
the
did
things-
that pretty well a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, exactly. But now they're releasing specs. Good.
And I think that does it for this week's episode of This Is Only a Test. If you made it all the way to the end of this podcast and you're one of our hardcore listeners, you're one of our core audience members, and thank you for listening, and thank you for watching our videos. If you want to show your support for this podcast and for all the videos that we do in general, consider buying one of our t-shirts. They're only going to be on sale for a couple more days at tested.com/shop. They are a theme for one-day builds, and all the sales for this shirt go into making more one-day build videos. So again, the website is tested.com/shop. And thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Do we
anything coming up on Tested this week?
We have our ongoing Weta series. Our part 2 is out already, and part 3 should be out very soon. This is the making of the short film, Farewell to Arms, and we're filming more model making videos with Bill and Kate this month, so expect some soon.
Do you think we can put some of the t-shirt proceeds towards a fan?
In this room?
Yeah. I would.
Well,
I would really appreciate that.
That problem's going to solve itself once we reach the fall and winter.
It is. This is San Francisco winter right now. It's like 50 degrees outside.
It's a reoccurring problem, Norm.
Yeah.
It comes back. All right. Here's one from Justin, a.k.a. Speed. Oh, no. Yeah. See, those games, they give those kids a false sense of achievement.
Yeah, and then I was like, "You're not even drifted." let's get.
See it.
Sorry about the whole addicting thing. Never make a mistake on a podcast because you will hear about it.
I think it's important not to correct people on the podcast.
It's important not to correct a scientist.